Find out what form of tyranny your cruel stepmother is taking in your subconscious. It is some negative conviction which works out in all your affairs. Florence Scovel Shinn, The Magic Path of Intuition, 2013. I have been asked to give a metaphysical interpretation of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, one of Grimm's fairy tales. This fairy tale was supposed to be for children, but men and women have packed the theater. It is because fairy tales come down from old legends of Persia, India, and Egypt, which are founded on truth. Snow White, the little princess, has a cruel stepmother who is jealous of her. This cruel stepmother idea appeals also in Cinderella. Nearly everyone has a cruel stepmother. The cruel stepmother is a negative thought form you have built up in the subconscious. A negative idea, continually dwelled upon, will create a thought form in the subconscious. These thought forms will meet you on your pathway of life until you neutralize them. If you are filled with suspicion, you soon find what you're looking for. What you fear you attract, and nothing can save you but neutralizing your fears. Act fearless and walk up to the lions in your way. Your fears will externalize in concrete experiences. Snow White's cruel stepmother is jealous of her and always keeps her in rags and in the background. All cruel thought forms do this. The cruel stepmother consults her magic mirror every day, saying, "Magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" One day the mirror replies, "Thou queen mayst fair and beauteous be, but Snow White is lovelier far than thee." This enrages the queen, so she decides to send Snow White to the forest to be killed by one of her servants. However, the servant's heart melts when Snow White begs for her life, so he leaves her in the woods. The woods are filled with terrifying animals and many pitfalls and dangers. She falls in terror to the ground, and while there, a most unusual spectacle presents itself. Scores of the most delightful little animals and birds creep up and surround her. Rabbits, squirrels, deer, beavers, raccoons, etc. She opens her eyes and greets them with pleasure. They are so friendly and attractive. She tells her story, and they lead her to a little house which she makes her home. Now these friendly birds and animals symbolize our intuitive leads or hunches, which are always ready to get you out of the woods. Prayer is telephoning to God, and intuition is God telephoning to you. Intuition comes from your superconscious mind. It is God within. The subconscious is simply power without direction. Through following intuition, you often go for one thing and get another. From the superconscious, the realm of intuition, what you should know will be revealed to you. The little house proves to be the home of the Seven Dwarfs. Everything is in disorder. So Snow White and her animal friends begin to clean the house. The squirrels dust with their tails. The birds hang things up using the little deer's horns for a hat rack. When the Seven Dwarfs come home from their work of digging gold, they discover the change and at last find Snow White asleep on one of the beds. In the morning she tells her story, remains with them to keep house and cook their meals. The Seven Dwarfs symbolize the protective forces all about us. In the meantime, the cruel stepmother consults her mirror and it says to her, "Over the hills in the greenwood shade, where the Seven Dwarfs their dwelling have made, their Snow White is hiding her head, and she is lovelier far, oh, queen than thee." This infuriates the queen, so she starts off disguised as an old hag with a poison apple for Snow White. She finds her in the house of the Seven Dwarfs and tempts her with the big, red, luscious apple. The birds and animals endeavor to tell her not to touch it. They try to give her the hunch not to eat it. They rush around in dismay, but Snow White can't resist the apple. She takes one bite and falls, apparently dead. Now all the little birds and animals rush off to bring the Seven Dwarfs to the rescue, but too late, Snow White lies lifeless. They all bow their little heads in grief. Then suddenly the prince appears, kisses Snow White, and she comes to life. They are married and live happily ever after. The queen, the cruel stepmother, is swept away by a terrific storm. The old thought form is dissolved and dissipated forever. The prince symbolizes the divine plan of your life. When it wakes you up, you live happily ever after. In the divine plan, every righteous desire of the heart is satisfied. You are the leading character in your life scenario. To live intuitively is to live fourth-dimensionally. The magic path leads you out of the house of bondage and into your promised land. It is a path of destiny, where your failures are transmuted into successes and handicaps prove stepping stones. Find out what form of tyranny your cruel stepmother is taking in your subconscious. It is some negative conviction which works out in all your affairs. We hear people saying, "My good always comes to me too late. I've lost so many opportunities." We must reverse the thought and say repeatedly, "I am wide awake to my good." We must drown out the dreary suggestions of the cruel stepmother. Eternal vigilance is the price of freedom from these negative thought forms. You've listened to the words of Florence Scovel Shinn, a wisdom memo where the folktale Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is explained as an allegory for spiritual and personal growth. Shinn's interpretation is a profound explanation of the soul's journey toward enlightenment, where each character and event represents different aspects of the inner journey towards self-awareness, balance, and fulfillment. It highlights the battle between the ego and the higher self, the importance of inner purity and innocence, and the transformative power of love and awakening. Snow White represents the pure, innocent, and divine nature of the soul. Her beauty and purity symbolize the inherent goodness and potential within each individual. The evil queen is interpreted as the ego or the lower self, which is driven by vanity, jealousy, and the desire for control. The queen's obsession with being the fairest of them all reflects the ego's constant need for validation and superiority. The magic mirror represents the subconscious mind, which reflects back the truth about one's inner state. It is a tool that reveals the truth, often showing the queen that Snow White, the pure soul, is fairer than she is. The Seven Dwarfs symbolize different aspects of the mind or personality. Each dwarf represents a specific quality or trait that can be harnessed for personal growth and spiritual development. For example, Doc might represent wisdom, Grumpy could symbolize the need to overcome negativity, and Happy might signify joy and contentment. The poison apple represents the temptations and negative influences that can lead the soul astray. It is a symbol of the deceptive allure of materialism, ego, and other distractions that can cause spiritual death or a loss of innocence. The prince represents a higher self or the divine masculine, who comes to awaken and rescue the soul, Snow White, from the clutches of the ego, the evil queen. The prince's kiss symbolizes the awakening of consciousness and a reunion of the soul with its true nature. The glass coffin in which Snow White is placed represents a state of suspended animation or spiritual dormancy. It is a period of waiting and reflection, where the soul is preserved but not yet fully awakened.